Now it's my pleasure to introduce our panelist for today's broadcast, Katie Davies, Senior Director of Advisory Services at Radius. Katie oversees Radius's advisory client engagements across 5 continents, with expertise in a wide variety of cross-border issues, including HR, tax, intellectual property, and immigration consulting. Over to you, Katie.
Thanks, Ed, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody. So today's session, we're going to gallop through the arena of various HR considerations when you're doing business overseas. Very much steered towards the types of businesses who perhaps are unfamiliar with operating overseas from an HR perspective, perhaps going into that territory for the first time. So we're going to look at things like company considerations, company structuring, and you might wonder why that has a place on an HR presentation. That will become clear. Things around the employment contract, employee benefits, looking at the contractor versus employee debate, a little bit on expatriate compliance relating to payroll, and throughout the presentation trying to flag some examples, real-life examples with country specifics. Next slide, please, Ed. So in terms of why are we talking about a company structuring consideration? Well, oftentimes I'll get a phone call where I have the HR or the finance director on the phone and they say, we're about to hire somebody in a country, let's pick Germany or France, but we don't have any legal presence, but we need to hire that person in 3 weeks' time. And the board is pushing for this, and it's a really good guy and a really good candidate. Well, the answer is, in many, many countries, you can't just hire somebody. There's got to be something that happens in terms of registration, be that for a payroll, or some form of legal presence in terms of corporate structure. So this is where HR has a close relationship with obviously the finance, the tax, and the legal teams within their organizations. And if those don't exist internally because the organization is too small, then we need to be linking and connecting with the various professionals to make sure that this happens. So the important thing here is obviously whether or not you have a legal entity and you're ready to go and fit for purpose in a territory will dictate the timeline against which you can ramp up and hire somebody. So for example, in many countries it's actually illegal to hire people before the company has registered for payroll, or more importantly for social security. And that will impact the ability to quickly ramp up, as I said, and hire in territory. Next slide. The next question is, well, if you don't have an entity in a country or a registration, what does that look like? And the answer to that is actually back to HR, which is what are the people that you're hiring on the ground being employed to do? Are they sales representatives who have relative autonomy to go out and negotiate terms, or are they back office workers, some administrative support, maybe they're in a marketing role? The activity of the employees that we're looking to hire will dictate the type of entity that we legally need to set up. And this all revolves around whether or not those activities create what's called a permanent establishment or a corporate tax nexus. And the relevance of that is that those activities, or where those activities are being performed, could trigger a corporate income tax charge for the employing entity, which could be the US parent. So it's really important to understand the structure, not only from a timing perspective in terms of recruitment and being able to pay people, but also the impact on the corporate tax position. And the common types of entities that we see are obviously the representative office, which is low presence, relatively quick to set up, but typically we're looking at least 4 to 6 weeks to get the payroll registration, or something more substantive, and that would typically be a branch or a subsidiary. And obviously that's a completely different subject in its own right in terms of what type of entity to set up. But it's important to kind of get that concept as the starting blocks when you're looking to think about international expansion and employing people. So turning to the more HR-focused considerations, when you're looking to start up your international office, you basically have 3 choices. You're either going to employ local employees, that's people employed on local terms and conditions that are paid off of a local payroll. You may resource up with foreign-based employees who are temporarily assigned or expatriated to the overseas location for a period of time. That may be permanent or maybe for a period of 1 to 3 years. Or you might choose to use third-party contractors. And we're going to have a look at each of these in turn. Now, obviously, with employees, expats, as well as local hires, very often there's going to be a need to run a local payroll and report compensation in the local currency in the country in which they're working. Now, with expats, that will sometimes result in a dual payroll arrangement being set up, which we'll look at later on. With expats, you also have to think very long and hard about the immigration and visa requirements that must be thought about as part of the planning for that expatriate assignment, because it will impact the timing. And then with respect to the contractor argument, there is a big debate as to at what point does a contractor really become a de facto employee. Are they truly a bona fide contractor, or are they trying to fly under the radar screen of not being deemed to be an employee because of all that brings with it?